In an alternate universe where Guardian Crystal is a couple inches thicker. Hello, my fellow hunters. So, it occurred to me that Monster Hunter Wilds added Zoshia. I know what you're thinking. Wow, that's only just occurred to you. The game's been out months. Jesus, you've literally hunted him like multiple times. Whoa, are you okay? Yeah, alright, okay. But what he represents is kind of ridiculous, right? Because Zoshia should in theory be the most powerful monster ever? Technically a guardian, not a real living flesh and blood creature, an amalgam, a laws of nature defying abomination whipped up by an advanced technological marvel of a civilization at war, a war which necessitated such a thing. Basically, from what we know about Zoshia and what he's done and what he's been involved with, he's kind of a ridiculous force of destruction. And a couple of years ago, I did a talk on who I feel is the handful of literally most powerful monsters in all of Monster Hunter. And that included external, not strictly canon things, especially at the time, like Frontier, even stories and so on. But I felt it was more than overdue to have a little re-examine, especially with everything that's come since, and this time keep it properly mainline. So with that in mind, let's actually get into this, and of course we will be returning to Zoshia. And before we get into number 5, I do want to do just a little honourable mention or two. The first being kind of a general, all of the big Elder Dragon-y final bosses, you know, your Nakarkoses, your Gogmazios, your Atalkar, your Shara Ishvalda. They are all, well, incredibly top-tier, almost pinnacle beings in Monster Hunter. They just don't have that special factor that would put them officially on a list like this. Then there is 3 other distinct honorable mentions that I always feel like I need to make. The first is Zora Magdaros.
You serious?
I know. But look, size matters in the animal kingdom, especially in competition between competing organisms, and he is the largest monster that exists, at least in terms of bulk and weight. Not as long as Dalamadur, but in terms of raw heft, I mean, he's a walking mountain of a fire tortoise. And essentially, what can anything really do? There are a lot of monsters that could very elegantly fly and dance around him, avoid him, most of the elder dragons, etc. But nearly anything would have one hell of, well, almost an impossible time actually doing any kind of significant damage, and essentially one crushing, and that'd do it. And I think Zora Magdaros gets a bad rep because of how his fight played out, but in terms of what he's got to offer, it's kind of ridiculous. Then we have something like Gore Magala, Shagaru Magala, the Magalas, simply because why they themselves aren't up there in terms of, you know, who would win in a fight, but they bring with them the Frenzy, and the Frenzy is the second most devastating naturally spread force that a monster can muster, arguably, on balance. It can rage uncontained through ecosystem after ecosystem, sending every monster into, well, a frenzy, and causing massive swaths of destruction. Not to mention the damage the infected monsters do to, again, the environment, to humans, to villages, before they succumb. Shagaru Magala, left unchecked, is an extinction event. Localized, but maybe it could spread further, and generally, there's a reason the frenzy is such a big bad deal. But that said, the final honorable mention here, gaismagorm arguably has a force greater in the curio, being able to unleash a swarm of these devouring, flying, almost piranha-esque leeches that not only can just kill things and kill very large, powerful, high constitution monsters, but then afflict them and kind of give them that frenzy once over. Of course, functionally different, but again, it is a devastating final blow to any ecosystem left unchecked when it comes to the curios, especially if they don't have a Malzeno to help hold him back. And the thing is, in nature, you've generally got two kind of options. Well, there's a lot more than two, but two of the best ones are be bigger than everything else, you know, your elephants move, or have more of you than anything else, your kind of ants move, your various colony animals. If there's so many of us, they can't kill all of us, we exist forever. Or in ants' case, holy hell, this is horrifying, no matter who we are or what we are, if we're covered in ants, we're fucked. And gaismagorm kind of does both at the same time, with the swarm fighting with him and him also being massive and powerful. Honestly, he came so close to being on the list. He really is one of the apocalyptic forces without literally being Black Dragon level. Talking of Black Dragon level, let's get into number 5 then. 2 of the 3 Black Dragons. Here I was really kind of struggling, but we're going to talk about Elatrion and Diamoralis kind of together, because I think it's fair to sort of put them equal, and I think you can make a strong argument for everything above them, well, being above them. Elatrion, of course, you know him, the Iceborne fight was all you needed for him to make a statement of his power, master of every single element. But he has been confirmed afraid of other monsters, including, well, a main one that we'll be talking about in a moment, and certainly doesn't come out on top against Fatalis, so he makes a harder claim to the higher reaches. But let's be honest, 5th out of, 300 plus is not bad for Mr. Blazing Black Dragon. Same for Diamoralis. He boiled an entire ocean, turning it crimson with the blood of every living thing that died. But he is very slow and sluggish, he's big but not huge. Meteor storms are great, but we've got an even more powerful commander of meteor storms coming up, and while again, him simply being a black dragon kind of means he has to be here, I think joint 5th with his black dragon brother is quite fair. So who are the 4 above? That might be the interesting discussion here. And I think the more I've thought about it, especially with skeletons that we've seen, I'm actually going to put in a call for Dalamadur. And again, the main reason for this is simply size. And it's a difficult one when it comes to Dalamadur versus a monster that is canonically and lore-wise labeled as just the top. Like in a hypothetical Dalamadur versus Fatalis, I did a video a while back on monsters I think could maybe beat Fatalis, and Dalamadur was worth talking about. Because when you have a mouth that is large enough that you could, well, bite him in half fairly comfortably, it's hard to rationalize that with the knowledge that Fatalis just is the strongest monster that exists, that all others are afraid of, a wiper-outer of civilizations by himself. We've seen the Big Burn in action. So it's what is actually more likely, the reality of the sheer size difference between them, or the reality of what we know they are factually capable of. And I think that while, spoiler alert, we will be talking about Fatalis, you can make a clear argument for both. I think when it comes to Dalamadur versus like Elatrion or Diamoralis, I think it's quite easy to see a Dalamadur coming out on top. They can carve mountains with their movements, their coiling and their spines. The size they can get to is proven by the Rotten Vale skeleton, proven by the skeletons in Wilds, is unprecedented. But even the size of the ones that we face, I mean, the strength of a snake is actually quite ridiculous. A Dalamadur coiled around a Diamoralis, I just don't see what it can do unless it can get sheerly hot enough that even Dalamadur, with its immense heat resistance, can't actually hold on. That's the one kind of thing. But Dalamadur itself has fire so hot it is blue, which obviously is big hot, on top of drawing down meteors that retain that burning blue property for who knows how many years after they have hit the ground, as seen by the Dalamadur meteors still smouldering away in the rotten veil long after the Dalamadur that put them there has perished. They have some serious firepower on top of a build, size, and strength factor that makes it really hard to think they wouldn't be a danger to essentially anything. Anything except maybe the next one in the list, Safi'jiiva. See, Dalamadur can't fly, obviously, so anything that is both smart enough and capable of staying out of its range, and while out of its range doing the damage it needs to do, kinda should get there. And Safi'jiiva, since the Iceborne lawbook came out, we know was designed specifically to be an equal counterpart to Fatalis, the red dragon to the black dragons. He is top tier, and that is inarguable. That was very, very nice to know and find out, because I always did think that about him. It just made too much sense. And we know that Alatreon came to the New World to burn the Xeno'jiiva cocoons because he was scared of more Safi'jiivas hatching, therefore, well, implying that he's very aware that Safi'jiiva is a more dangerous and threatening organism than himself. That says a lot. A black dragon knows that Safi'jiiva is not something it wants to encounter, so it goes out of its way to burn it in cocoon form. That is a big deal. And then when you look at Sapphire of the Emperor, arguably the most powerful attack, maybe second only to Fatalis' Big Burn we have ever seen in the series, it's like, yeah, I can kind of see why. What could really properly survive that, especially on repeat? Then you've got the fact that he can regenerate himself, especially if he's in a nest, endlessly, essentially, as long as there's energy in the ground, and you have an incredibly tough, durable, flying menace that can drop monster nukes, while being canonically a rival to the strongest black dragon. And it's here then that we get into the second place that really, as I alluded to at the start, defined this video, and that is Xochitl. Because while in-game, he's not exactly, the most challenging thing. He is one of the hardest fights in Wilds, but that's not saying a lot in general. He's just, a good solid monster in a fight. It's epic and fun, but, difficulty-wise, he doesn't really carry that Black Dragon's second most powerful monster that exists in mainline energy. So this one was really tricky, because, as I said at the start, with what we know about him, he was instrumental in wiping out a civilization advanced enough to make and control artificial monsters. That is a big feat, a big deal. How can I not label that as up there in the highest sense? Especially when he has built into him attacks and parts of the other monsters for the most part on this very list. He is, in theory, or at least should be, a perfect organism, artificial or not, of destruction. He is the canon version of the Equal Dragon weapon, or the closest we will ever get. And that kinda does a lot for him. I think if we just go on the fight and what you see, this placement feels absurd. But if we go on what we know, I think it's hard to argue anything different. He simply is quite literally built diff compared to everything else that we have fought, except perhaps one. And I think you can make a clear argument based on deeds done alone that Xochitl has to be up there in the running for the most threatening thing to exist in Monster Hunter. There was a reason it was treated the way that it was, and, well, the fact that they kind of keep coming back is a problem. But even though he has parts of Fatalis, I think the number one spot still has to go to Fatalis. Outside of the fact that he is just defined by being the top of the monster totem pole, and here obviously I am excluding subspecies and variants and all of that, because then, the top three would just be Fatalis, Crimson Fatalis, and White Fatalis, etc. I think Fatalis has to be here until anything is explicitly shown or said to be better. Because his Big Burn is unbelievable. nothing is going to survive that for long, even things that are normally very flame resistant. He has that mythicalness about him. He really is if Elder Dragon is a tier above normal monsters in their power and their enigmaticness, and no one really quite understands what they are, well then Fatalis is like a tier above. He's an Elder Dragon to Elder Dragons. And that he's done, that he said he can do, everything with Shrade, everything we've seen in his first proper canonical fight in Iceborne, it really is hard to put him anywhere else, even if I think you can certainly make an argument that other things on this list do have a non-0% chance of both just surviving him and in fact beating him. So I, for one, feel comfortable with him being here, because it really is kind of as easy to say as, guys, it's Fatalis. What do you want here? He is, you know, Fatalis. In any case, though, I would love to know what you think. It's hard to go into too much detail when talking about so many monsters. Each one of these I could do a full-on 20-30 minute lore deep dive on, and I very much, as you know, love doing that, but I think this is where my kind of current shuffling of them lands, and more than anything, this is just for fun. Everyone likes a classic bit of who's the most powerfulist? So let me know who you think is the most powerfulist. And for now then, like if you enjoyed this, subscribe and hit the bell for more. Consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below. And until we meet again, a goodbye.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.